Will hunting, Matt Damon, despite having genius-level brilliance, including a knack for remembering data and the capacity to intuitively prove complex mathematical theorems, works as a janitor at MIT and resides alone in a poorly furnished apartment in a destitute South Boston area. He was an abused foster child who unconsciously holds himself responsible for his unfortunate childhood. He uses this self-hatred to undermine his personal and professional lives. As a result, he is unable to keep up a consistent career or committed love life. In the first week of class, Professor Gerald Lambeau, Stellan Skarsgard, a Fields medalist and combinatorialist, challenges his students by posting a challenging graduate-level math problem on the blackboard in the hopes that someone will figure it out by the end of the semester. Will resolves the problem. As everyone looks to see who solved it, Lambeau presents a new issue that took him and his coworkers 2 years to establish. When Lambeau finds Will solving it, he initially thinks he is damaging the board and chases him away as Will criticizes him. When it comes out that Will had the right answer, Lambeau makes an effort to track down Will. After work one evening, Will and his best friend Chucky head to a bar near to Harvard University with a few of their other friends. At the bar, Chucky makes approaches at the attractive Skylar, telling her he is a Harvard student himself. Clark, a co-ed from Skylar's class, challenges Chucky's understanding of American colonial history in an effort to embarrass him. Will jumps to Chucky's defense, following Clark's lead with historically accurate information he has remembered. Following the successful diffusing of a possible altercation, Will discovers that Skylar is attracted to him and obtains her phone number. A tough judge refuses to be fooled by Will's sharp knowledge of legal precedent, which includes citing a case from the 1700s. A few days later, Will attacks a young person who had bullied him in kindergarten years earlier, and he now faces imprisonment after hitting a police officer who was attending to the fight. Will is given the option of being released under Lambeau's personal supervision, where he must study mathematics and see a therapist to help him deal with his anger and defensive personality, or he can go to jail. Realizing that Will may have the potential to be a great mathematician, like the genius Évariste Galois, Lambeau steps in on his behalf. Despite seeming to think he doesn't need counseling, Will decided to opt for the latter. Will's connection to 5 psychologists is unsuccessful. Lambeau finally contacts his former MIT classmate and his old buddy Sean Maguire, Robin Williams, out of pure desperation. In contrast to his 5 predecessors, Sean pushes back at Will and finally manages to break through to him and his aggressive, sarcastic defensive mechanisms since he is also from South Boston. At one point, Will investigates a watercolor painting that Sean had created on his own and comes to the conclusion that it represents Sean's repressed emotions and grief over his wife's premature death. Will is frightened by Sean, who holds him by the throat after becoming angry and aggressive, risking any possibility of his reforming. When Will closes the session and leaves, Lambeau enters, thinking that Will has damaged his prospects of seeing yet another therapist. However, Sean views Will as a challenge and instructs Lambeau to bring him back each week. When Sean describes how he passed up his chance to attend the Red Sox in the 1975 World Series, missing Carlton Pudge Fisk's iconic home run in the memorable Game 6, in order to meet and spend time with a complete stranger in a bar who would eventually become his wife, Will is particularly moved. The young woman he met at a bar close to Harvard, Skylar, inspires Will to try to start a relationship with her. However, there is a lot more than one side to this doctor-patient connection. As Sean encourages Will to take a real, hard, unbiased look at himself and his life, Will pushes Sean in the same manner that Sean does. The major reason Sean decides to take Will on as a client may be because to his own pathology, which prevents him from ever considering entering into another romantic relationship in the wake of his beloved wife's untimely death from cancer some years before. In the meanwhile, Lambeau pushes Will so hard to succeed that Will finally refuses to go to the job interviews that Lambeau has set up for him for positions that could prove challenging, despite his tremendous gifts. Sean thinks Lambeau is pushing Will too hard and adds that Will's buddies are the most committed and loyal individuals he hangs out with, which causes a rift between Lambeau and Sean on Will's future. Will decides to develop a closer level of trust and sharing with Sean after unintentionally seeing their angry argument. The incident has evidently made him understand that the matter is a little more complicated than Will versus the world. He now realizes that these mentors are just as imperfect, conflicted, and human as he is. Skylar begs that Will accompany her to California so that she may start medical school at Stanford. Will becomes anxious by the idea. Once Will perceives Skylar's support for him over his history as condescending, he throws a fit and walks out of the dorm while still undressed. Even though Lambeau is unable to solve some of the theorems and is openly envious of Will, he dismisses the labor he is performing for him as a joke. Lambeau begs Will to keep it all, but Will ignores him and leaves. Later, at the job interview, Will spends a lot of time explaining to the interviewer why he isn't interested in working as a government codebreaker. Will sends Chucky in his place during a different interview. The panel of representatives are made fun of by Chucky, who even gets them to hand him all of their money before jokingly threatening them with a call from his attorney. Sean comments that Will is so skilled at predicting future failure in his romantic and personal relationships that he either lets them fade out or purposefully leaves in order to minimize the chance of enduring further emotional suffering. Sean then asks Will what he wants to accomplish with his life, and Will responds in a whimsical way, to which Sean responds by simply showing him the door. Will goes on to inform Chucky, his best buddy, that he intends to work as a laborer for the rest of his life. Chucky opens up to Will in a brutally honest way, saying that he thinks it's insulting for Will to waste his potential as a worker and that one of his recurring dreams is to knock on Will's door in the morning after picking him up for work only to discover that he's simply not there, that he's left without saying goodbye. Will hits more than anybody else, even a qualified expert like Sean, responds to Chucky's honesty. Sean discloses that he was a victim of child abuse during the process of Sean's treatment session, where Will attends. When Sean repeatedly assures Will that it was not his fault that he was subjected to such terrible abuse and abandonment, Will at first becomes defensive and angry. Will eventually cries in recognition as he realizes what has happened. Will finally makes the decision to stop being a victim of his own inner problems and take control of his life after much reflection. Upon receiving a restored Chevy Nova from his friends for his 21st birthday, he makes the decision to visit California and see Skylar once again. Leaving aside his lucrative offers for jobs in the government and corporations, Will uses one of Sean's own quips to justify his actions. "I had to go see about a girl," in a quick email to Sean. Sean also departs to explore the world, but not before making peace with Lambeau. As the film comes to a close, Chucky realizes in a moving way that Will has moved on in order to accomplish a long-held goal of his own. The next scene shows Will beginning his inspirational journey to California in preparation for a fresh start with Skylar and a plunge into the unpredictably unpredictable future.